guys, welcome to another Games Masters chat. Today we've got a full house with Fallaize and Feargus and Sam. Thanks guys for joining me today. And we actually have some have something we want to talk about straight away, as we were talking about just before we went live. We were talking about learning new systems. Because I just ran Fate for the first time last night, and so I've been on forums this morning looking up all the rules that I messed up and questions that I had for that came up last night. They're like, oh, that's how that works. That's how that works. Yeah, so we can talk about how we learn new systems, the process that we go through to learn them. Probably really depends on how crunchy the system is.
Yeah, I think that's a kind of fair point. Like definitely how crunchy the system is. Thankfully, a lot of systems do have like some online guides or video guides that make things a bit easier as well. But like going from learning Monster Hearts and the Powered by the Apocalypse system was a walk in the park. It was a very simple thing to follow. It was very, very straightforward.
Yeah.
But then learning Shadowrun it took me weeks to read that book because it's very crunchy and also badly written. But yeah, this a very,
yeah, how it's written makes a big difference.
Yeah, definitely is. If you've got a good editor for the RPG, that definitely makes a big difference. But like, I'm learning two. Well, I've kind of started with one, and I'm going to be learning two at the moment. But like, the difference between the Call of Cthulhu book and the Savage Worlds book there is.
Yeah, that's a big difference.
Like, that's a significant difference in size.
Bit large.
And bearing in mind that this is only one book of the Call of Cthulhu, this is the other book of Call of Cthulhu there.
Yeah.
So, this is one game, this is a second game. Like, there's such extreme differences between systems.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
But,
oh man, I want to run Call of Cthulhu, but that kind of puts me off it a little bit looking at that. I'm like, do I want to run it that bad?
So one of those books is the player book, which is the book where it has all the information creating your characters and playing the game. And the other book, the bigger of the two books, is the keeper book, which is it's one of those things. So there's one thing you'll notice if you learn other systems is they call the GM something different in a lot of them. So like in Monster Hearts, it was the Master of Ceremonies. In Call of Cthulhu, it's the Keeper of Arcane Lore and Knowledge.
Wow.
What a title! Yes, super pretentious. What a title!
I am the keeper.
It's like, buddy, you're just a GM. It's fine.
Yeah, you're just a games master, but it's like, no, I am the keeper of arcane lore and knowledge. And,
I like it.
And you will address me as such.
I like it.
Alien RPG is a game mother. I like that one.
The game
mother.
Oh, that's awesome.
That makes sense for the Alien RPG, you know.
Yeah, I think Fate is just the game master. Pretty straightforward.
I'm pretty sure they just call them the GM in Fate 4, yeah.
Yeah, the most
masters.
recent system I learned. Yeah, it's the same in the most recent system I learned, which was the Wrath and Glory one.
Yeah.
The 40k specific one, which I'm not going to bring the book down because it's really big and heavy.
I've never come across anyone else that uses Dungeon Master other than D&D, and I think that might be because people are worried about copyright, maybe.
Well, I think the thing because Dungeon Master is specific to D&D, and so I mean, I had been using it as a blanket all, but I like Games Master as a term personally.
Yeah, so
or Storyteller. I like Storyteller as well.
That's true. Yeah,
I've seen Master of Ceremonies floated around, which sounds a bit pretentious, but I like a lot.
Master of Ceremonies is a Powered by the Apocalypse thing, I think. Yeah.
Oh, is it? Oh, that's where I've seen it then.
Yeah.
My personal preference is Pimp Daddy, but you know.
Naturally, yeah. Storyteller is the World of Darkness, and I do like. I've played World of Darkness, a version of which one was it? I can't remember which one it was. I know I've played a branch of World of Darkness in a one-shot. I've done a lot of one-shots.
Is Mage World of Darkness?
I think it is.
Mage
yeah, so that's the one.
Yeah, we did that.
Can you remember when you rolled the d10s? Was it 8 or up or 7 or up that was the
7 or
success?
up.
7.
Yeah.
Because one of the older versions, the ones I used to play back in the day, I feel like we're 8 and up, but that might just be me.
That's intense.
Yeah, that's a.
That's hard mode.
Yeah. It was very gritty, and it had a lot of
That's like a 20% success chance on any dice.
Yeah. Although you had like a lot of ways to like your base stats and the dots you had in the stats gave you more dice initially, so kind of balanced out a bit. And they still had explosions on 10 and stuff. Yeah.
Well, we're doing Exalted at the moment, Sarah,
Yeah.
Feargus and I as well, and that I think is basically the same.
Yeah, it's 7 and up. I love the dice pulls, rolling like 15 d10s at once.
So
I'm
satisfying.
running Shadowrun this evening, and I've got my bag of just D6s.
Yeah.
For Shadowrun.
So if you're tuning in just now, you can ask any questions you want into the chat, and we'll be happy to try to answer them to the best of our collective abilities. You can also come to our Discord server. If you go to wayfarersleague.com, we have a link to our Discord server, and it is full of very helpful, awesome people that are more than happy to help with questions about any game system, honestly. I bet there's at least one person in our server that's probably played whatever system you'd have a question about.
You'd hope so, with the 420 odd people.
Yeah.
We have at the moment.
Hopefully.
How many hours, how many years of GMing experience have we got between us?
I don't know.
What between the 4 of us?
Between the 4 of us, probably not that much.
Oh,
Because,
I was gonna say the server, but yeah, just the 4 of us. Yeah.
Well, I've been running games since the beginning of 5e, so that was in. Let's see, I was pregnant with my little girl when I learned, I think, or it was just before. So nine years? No, 8 years.
Someone needs to do the maths for me then. So it's like the first game I ran, I was 19.
Okay.
I'm 36 now.
so that would be 7 years.
You want to try
No,
that
sorry.
again?
17 years? Yeah.
That's so good, dude.
I went to bed at like 5.
That's why I didn't do it. That's why I
man.
got someone else to do it, because I would have made the same mistake.
17 years, yeah. I think I've only been GMing for about maybe 5 years now. Like, actually, like, properly, like, seriously GMing. I ran a couple of games before then, but, like, a couple of one-offs, but, yeah, like, seriously full-on GMing, probably about 5 years or so.
Yeah, I remember when I started out, it was kind of like, you did one game for your mates, and then they liked it, so then maybe you did another game later, or, like, your friends did a game and stuff like that, but, like, seriously, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
a lot of that for a little while.
I essentially started running because I wanted to learn how to play D&D, and no one I knew around me played. 5e was coming out. I was like, well, I'll just get that and learn how to play. And I just spent a month binging all the materials. And I bought them as they came out. So,
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun, though. I essentially cobbled together because you get the starter set. There's 5 pre-gens, and I had a 6th player. So we just kind of cobbled together a character from those things because they didn't have character creation out yet. It was fun.
Yeah.
So I had a question. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
I was going to say, those character creation systems like D&D Beyond or PC Gen or Chummer are, in some cases, an absolute lifesaver. Because, there's a lot of things of I would never want to make a Shadowrun character without Chummer ever again, because it is the most grueling process if you don't have that program. But the program makes it very simple.
So we have a question. How do each of you handle the amount you play to avoid burnout? How could GMs keep this from happening to them?
How do I handle it? Very badly.
I was about to say, you guys handle burnout? Wow.
Yeah.
I think it's... Sorry.
I'm about to start my 4th campaign that I'm currently running.
Yeah, it's
What you do is you run about 5 games, and then you have burnout, and then you take a month off.
Yeah.
And then you feel, I can run games again.
Yeah. It's like the cycle. So you're like you go hell for leather for like 2 or 3 months, and then you're really apologetic to all your players while you have to like postpone the games so that you can like get your shit together.
But guys, I can't run any more games for this month. I just need to like sleep.
Yeah.
Okay, so
how
if
I deal with burnout, I don't get married, I don't have any kids, I have no responsibilities.
so if you want a more healthy answer,
What's so healthy about that?
I think it's being realistic about what you can actually mentally handle. Because when I first started playing D&D, I just wanted to keep playing as much as possible. And so I started trying to run, 2 or 3 games, and I realized I can't actually keep this up. It's not possible for me personally. And so I, again, like apologetic to my players, like I actually cannot keep playing this. So pulling back and learning to say no, because the little kid inside of you says, oh, I want to play all the games because that's what I want to do. The little kid in me, but then recognizing, no, I need to have actually a few nights to just not do anything and to not escape into these magical lands, because it does take creative and mental energy to play these games. And so if you don't have downtime between these amazing adventures, you will end up burning yourself out.
Yeah, I think I burnt out like properly twice before I realised that.
Yeah, it takes a little while.
It's like you like learn the hard way kind of thing, but it's you just have to be like, I mean, and it's different for everyone. Like Fallaize said, he's running like 4 games or whatever.
Yeah.
And he's okay keeping that pace, but like I could not do that. Like absolutely not. So I've got 2 games that I run at the moment, and one is a smaller game. It's got like 3 people in it, and that's it. Like I'm not going to run more than that because I've got more like other commitments and stuff that I need to do. Like just have my me time.
Yeah.
Sit in front of the television with some face pack on and some cucumbers on my eyes and stuff like that.
Not mental image.
And a beer,
2's kind of reasonable as well, right?
Yeah.
I think when I was running 2, I was just like, okay, this is 2 and that's it, and I'm not going to run anymore. And then another game, and then I was like, no, I really want to run this, and so I did a 3rd one. I was like, that's it, I'm not going to do more. And now I'm doing the 4th one. But it's kind of hard to explain, like, dealing with burnout for me, purely because my brain works in a really weird way. I feel like my brain doesn't work the same way that most people's do, because I can compartmentalize in everything in my life. So unless I'm specifically thinking about a particular game that I'm running or a particular thing that I'm doing, it's not even in my mind. It's gone. It's out of my mind completely.
Yeah.
And then as soon as I need to focus on it, it's just there, and I can access it again. I don't know what that is, and I don't know if that's...
No, I know exactly what you mean.
Or something, but...
No, I know exactly what you mean. It's like concentration management kind of thing.
Yeah.
Where it's just like, if I'm on this subject, I'm full on that subject. And then it's like, no, I'm done. I'm doing my other thing now. Completely forget about it. Put it down, and like you can just leave it and not stress about it. It's all done,
Yeah, I think that's called being a mentally healthy human being.
I definitely am not.
Whereas I'm like thinking about all of my games all of the time, and I'm definitely like, I shouldn't be thinking about D&D while like eating dinner or at the gym or like walking and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, no, this isn't healthy, and maybe I should stop. But then I don't.
I'm constantly thinking about everything. It's funny because I'll have conversations with my husband, and we'll be talking about one thing, and then suddenly this other thing will come in because my brain will go on this little tangent, and I'll end up all the way over here while he's still on this original conversation. Like he'll just give me this look, like, what in the world are you talking about?
Isn't it wonderful when you do that and your partner's like, what are you talking about? And you're like, what do you mean? I'm talking about this. And they're like, like that context is in your head.
Yeah.
Not out of this conversation.
Well, I'll usually say it, realize either the context isn't there, and then I'll take him on that journey, which is, very helpful.
Sounding like that scene from the very beginning of The Social Network, when Jesse Eisenberg as Mark Zuckerberg is just like sat on a date, and he's having 3 conversations with her at the ssame time, and she cannot keep up with him.
That's my brain. That's what happens. So his question, how do each of you? So how do you pace yourself? So I think we kind of talked about that a little bit. I think I'm becoming more aware of how many games I can actually handle at a time. I've been pulling back running stuff just to because I was feeling more burnt out and not excited about the game. So I think the most important thing is that you need to be excited about what you're running.
Yeah.
And if you're not, figure out why.
I think running different systems helps as well.
Yeah.
I definitely have found that I'm getting really tired of running D&D, which doesn't mean I don't love it. Of course I love it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just I'm like, I want to run different things.
Yeah.
And I think that
holiday, don't you?
Yeah, it is. It's like, yeah, it is like, okay, I want a holiday from D&D now. And I think that can help with burnout, is just finding different things to run.
Yeah. And that's why I'm
Definitely agree.
excited about Fate, because I had been running D&D for so long, and so learning this, and also it's not only a different system, but it's also a different genre. It's not fancy. I'm doing a post-apocalyptic, weird, dark and kooky kind of my own version of post-apocalyptic United States, with how I'm going to be completely demolishing and changing, well, not demolishing, changing Disneyland into kind of a hellscape, and I'm very excited about that. And so that's the thing, is like getting excited about it, and then that refreshes your joy of running games.
I've definitely stopped running games because I just wasn't excited about running them anymore.
Yeah.
And I kind of, and usually it's a case of like, I'm going to put this game on hiatus for a while until I can, like, in the mindset to come back to it.
Yeah.
And it's like 2 or 3 years later and I still haven't gone back to it.
Mm.
Yeah. I mean, like, I think every game I've ever ended, or like the campaign that's ended before the finish, I've gone, well, it's just because I'm not into it anymore. So like, if you guys are okay, we'll just call it quits kind of thing. It's like, we've had some fun, but like, I'm not invested in it anymore kind of thing.
Yeah.
It needs to work out. Yeah.
And that is a perfectly fine thing to do, because at the end of the day, if you're not enjoying it,
Yeah.
You don't just have a responsibility to your players, you have a responsibility to yourself, and you should be enjoying the game as well.
Yeah.
So,
You talk about this almost every week as well, like the whole like being able to say no, like you were saying, Sarah, being able to say no, like time management and stuff like that. It's all the same thing. It's like, don't worry about being too polite. It's fine. It's okay. Your needs come first. Like, you want everyone to have fun, and you want to have fun too. But if you're burning out, it's fine. It's okay. People will understand. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, and if they don't understand, I mean, that's a bigger conversation with that person.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, very, very much so. But I think every player I've ever run for or played with have always wanted the GM to enjoy themselves as well. Like,
Yeah.
It's not a one-sided relationship. It's a give and take. So yeah, there's a lot of it, and generally variety is good. And even if you're not comfortable with different systems, like I'm running three of the games that I'm running are 5th edition D&D, but they're all incredibly different. Like Tyranny of Dragons is much more of a kind of typical D&D campaign, but then I've got the Villains game that Sarah and Feargus are in as well, which is a very different game to be running. And then my other game is Spelljammer, which is D&D but with spaceships. So there's no like comparison between them. They're all very, very different.
Yeah, I've slowly been shutting down the games that I've been running. And now I have one shot that's wrapping up this next week. And outside of that, now I'm just going to probably be... we're planning the 5e game in Behind the GM Screen, which was really good this morning. Which is making me more excited about running 5e in that campaign, which is good. Otherwise, I'm probably just going to continue to try to figure out this Fate game by doing little vignettes to learn the system.
Yeah, I've got 2 D&D campaigns. One of them should be wrapping up in, I don't know, like a month or 2, depending on what the players do. The other one is a long-running thing that, well, may or may.
Level 8 now, I think.
Yeah, the players have just got to level 8.
Yeah.
Everchosen.
And I'm already. That's the Everchosen. My beautiful clusterfuck of. And I'm already looking at a sci-fi system, Mothership, which is like.
We're all looking at sci-fi on here.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
you say
which
that?
I really, really want to run now. Actually, having looked at Mothership, it looks super cool.
Actually, that piece is something I wanted to say, which was like we're talking about like if you get bored or you're trying to burn out or something, you want to do something new, take a holiday or whatever, like running your system. But also one thing I found that really really helps is potentially running the same system but running it in a setting that you love or something that you know you're definitely always going to be super into.
Mm-hmm.
So I ran my Wednesday game for I'm still running my Wednesday game, like my D&D game for like forever, and that's like just normal D&D. But the Tuesday game I run is Star Wars 5th edition.
Yeah.
And that system is amazing. I mean, it's basically just 5th edition, but it's set in the Star Wars universe and everything's been like completely converted over.
Yes.
And like it's just wonderful. It's just so much fun.
Nice.
Like everywhere, and it's like every 5 seconds you're calling a Star Wars trope. Like it's just it doesn't. I think the important thing is it doesn't feel like running a D&D game, which is what I want. Even though it is basically the same system, it doesn't feel anything like running a normal D&D game, which is why it sort of departs from it.
Yeah, definitely. One of the things I loved with running Monster Hearts was just doing something that was so very much not D&D and not like any other RPG that I've played, because it's a system that is like there's not really a combat in the system. Like you can have combat, but it's not a combat system in any way.
Yeah.
It's very much a social and story system. And I've run the same one shot twice in that system, and both times completely different. Like not even slightly comparable. And it's the same system and it's the same setup, but it had like the first time ended with basically a war starting between werewolves, aliens, and infernals.
Yeah.
Then the second time I ran it, it ended with two relationships starting and a secret underground society of snake people hatching, like kind of starting to bring their plans to fruition to take over the world.
That's amazing.
That sounds so good.
And it was very funny because it was like the whole game was just like them investigating this thing, but the snake person was there the whole time, and the other characters were just like going off and starting relationships with NPCs, and they had no idea what was going on.
Yeah.
So
I actually would like another, because I was in that first one, and it was probably partially my fault that it happened so antagonistically.
It comes with the territory.
Really? I never would have guessed.
I know, but I ended up playing essentially the popular kid who everyone hates, so you kind of lean into that.
You were the Cordelia Chase
I
role in
was
the Regina George.
I was the Regina George, and I leaned into it.
Yeah,
so,
it was fantastic.
I think the thing that I kind of wish we had, I'd like to play that again just because of the string mechanic is quite unique to it, and I didn't really I don't feel like we really facilitated as much as we could have.
The second group didn't really either. That's one of the things I do want to do Monster Hearts as a campaign at some point when I'm not doing everything else that I'm doing. But,
yep.
But yeah, that string mechanic is such a unique thing that really some systems have kind of similar things where you have like character bonds, which you can like pull on the bonds to get bonuses. But this is a mechanic that is built for you to basically manipulate other characters.
Yeah.
By pulling a string on them and using something that you have on that person as leverage against them to make them do what you want or to benefit your role against them.
Oh, man. I would love to play that, and I would either need to play a character that I would know can work with everybody, or play that alien queen character and just lean into being the bad guy.
Yeah.
Oh,
There is
so much possibility.
definitely. But yeah, it was such a refreshing system, I think. And like, actually, that's one thing I'll say is if you are experiencing burnout and you want to try a different system, look at any Powered by the Apocalypse game. They are dead simple to run, and it's just unbelievably refreshing how just kind of chilled you can be whilst running that game, because you don't have to stress about stat blocks, and you don't have to stress about crazy mechanics or anything. It's just let the story happen. The GM never rolls. The GM never rolls in that game. It's all down to the players rolling.
Really? I don't think I realized that.
Yeah, no, the GM does not roll empowered by the Apocalypse. You roll, and whatever your result is, you don't even, as the GM, have to think too much about what the result of the roll is going to be, because they have a list of things that will happen depending on the degree of success. And it's vague enough that you can flavor it to be whatever you want it to be for the story, but it gives you that starting point, so you don't even have to stress about like coming up with something every single time. You have your starting point for every action that happens. So
Yeah,
definitely recommend Powered by the Apocalypse if you want a nice chill system to run.
Yeah, and Powered by the Apocalypse has a lot of different offshoots, like Monster Hearts.
Oh my, so many, yeah.
I really want to play what's the Thirsty Sword Lesbians?
Yeah.
Lesbians,
Oh
yes.
man, I need that book, and I feel like Santa's gonna bring it to me this year. So I can run it in the new year.
That whole system, I really want to play that.
Yeah, no, I saw.
But I shouldn't.
When it went up on Kickstarter, I was like, "Oh my god, this sounds amazing," and I want to play it. And then I was like, maybe I shouldn't play it. I don't know whether I'm the target demographic.
Well, I'll run it, and I won't judge you guys if you want to play in it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Ferg is running a homebrew, right? How did Ferg and those of you that began a homebrew start out building your campaigns? What did you feel was the absolute need to knows about your world before session 1?
Oh, that's a good question. So I actually started with a final boss, and I was like, okay, this is what I want my players to fight at the end of the campaign. And I kind of had a vague idea of how they would get there. And then I built the world around it. And in the beginning, because I wasn't great at world building back then, I just stole lots of world building from other IP that I liked.
That was when we started streaming it, it was like half of the cities in the world's names changed.
So yeah, I basically and I wasn't good at naming things either, so I was like, I'm just gonna steal a bunch of shit.
Yeah, and to be fair, I'm not judging you on that because that is a completely valid way of doing things, right?
And then what's great about homebrew stuff is that because you're not tied down to a particular book or anything, whatever your players do, you can just build the world around their actions, which is what I've ended up doing. So there was stuff that I had written down before the campaign started, where I was like, oh, this would be cool, and this would be a fun plot thread, that I've just completely thrown away. And because my players haven't gone near that particular NPC or in that direction, or they've decided to explore a particular plot thread that I kind of dangled in front of them at the very beginning. So now this whole campaign is all about a cult trying to take over the world and unleash dark gods upon the continent. And yeah, I was like, okay, cool. So this is where the story's going. But yeah, homebrew worlds, I started with a final boss, and then I built the world around that, taking liberally from other IP that I really enjoyed. And then hurriedly had to change everything when we started streaming because I thought, yeah, I don't think this will fly with copyright laws. and suddenly, like half the cities changed names. I was like, okay.
It's yeah, and I've done that as well. Like starting with a boss is always a really kind of good way to kind of start things. I think my Spelljammer game, I kind of started with not even just the final boss, but literally the entire enemy structure for the campaign, because the Spelljammer game that I'm running is set in a typical D&D world, but then aliens attack, and so I started with the aliens, and I started with like what's their structure and what's their hierarchy and all that, and so the big boss is going to be obviously the head of all these people. So that I kind of just started with that, and then with that game, because I was like, this is going to be a short game, I'm going to run it levels 1 through 10. I kind of just wrote the benchmarks for like each level, the kind of like the moments where I wanted them to level up in the kind of lead up to them finding this thing. And then there's a huge amount of flexibility in between those points. But basically as they go, that's kind of where I'm guiding them towards to get to these benchmarks. And things change. They've leveled up last session, which was a bit earlier than I intended, but they burnt down a tavern and destroyed a wall, and there was a lot that went down. So I was like, yeah, that's worthy of a level up at that point.
Burn down another town.
Starting with a theme is another really good way of starting a homebrew world. I
was gonna say that when for the Fate game, the whole reason I started reading the book, and then suddenly this idea came in, post-apocalyptic Disneyland, of like, I want to create that. That is a thing that I'm going to make. And that kind of spiraled out into my weird United States of America after the event. And then also building that. Then actually I took that idea and presented it to some players, and then they started to help with world building as well.
And that's another thing with world building homebrew worlds, is that you'll find that your players will say something and you really like that idea, and you take it and run with it. So Matt in the Everchosen game, they went to a wizard tower, and he mentioned that one of the portraits could move and talk, and I really liked that idea, and I kind of picked it up and ran with it. So now lots of paintings in important places with rich people can move and talk to people and have personalities, because I really liked that idea.
I do that a lot when I play, because I don't play very often, so I will just throw random stuff out without consulting at all, and just I trust any GM that I play with to tell me if something I say is just inherently wrong, in which case we'll backtrack. But most of the time, stuff like that, particularly flavor stuff, not so much of an issue. And I always encourage my players, I always want my players to do that as well, just kind of like throw stuff out and just say, oh yeah, no, it's this thing, and unless it is something that's utterly world breaking, which most of the time it won't be, then I'm happy to roll with whatever a player gives me. But yeah, starting with a theme is a great one. Starting with the villains game, I literally drew a map and then came up with a bit of history for the world, and most of the history of the world is straight off ripped out of Lord of the Rings. It's like the city that you guys started in is basically just nicer Mordor.
Nicer Mordor.
No, it really was. It was like,
there's to the point where the Empress of the Evil Empire was destroyed when her magical scepter was thrown into a volcano by a pair of halflings. That's how much I ripped off Lord of the Rings for that backstory. But that was the point, and that was kind of the point with villains, because I don't have an end goal for villains. That's just whatever's gonna happen is gonna happen. But that was the point with that campaign, was it was meant to be, what if, what happened after Sauron was destroyed from the perspective of the villains? That was the kind of initial question that I had for that game set up. So there's all sorts of different things that you can kind of do. So I always like to just do a big world map if I'm doing a big campaign that's going to have a lot of exploration in it, so that I at least have places down. I will come up with the details of the cities and the towns when people get to them. I will not do any of that in advance. And then looking at like running Call of Cthulhu, Call of Cthulhu is different in that it's not an adventure story, it's an investigation story, to the point where the player characters are referred to as investigators. So with that, I was like, okay, what is the mystery that they are going to have to solve? And the idea I ended up with was this phenomena where children would disappear and then just come back a few days later with no explanation and no memory of what had happened. And that was the starting point, and that's literally all I had to go off of at the beginning. I've now been like working out, okay, so why is this happening? How is this happening? Who's behind it? And building the campaign around those questions. So
Right.
Yeah.
There was a follow-up.
a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
There's lots of
I have before I open up the next follow-up question from Brad. Rob, I can't believe that Stuart was a sea monkey and just started out like that. We literally just played. That was the last session of Blades. Was us down in the sewers trying to survive against this giant creature that was apparently started off as a little sea monkey. That's nuts. I love it.
Basically, it was your own fault that you had to fight him. Is essentially
Well,
what's
yes,
happening.
that is what happened, and it wasn't my fault. It was Katie's fault. I will definitely throw her in the bus for that. She should have taken care of her pet and killed it appropriately. Anyway, let's see. So how much do you flesh out the area your players begin in, and how many plot hooks do you attempt to come up with? I haven't done a proper homebrew thing. Essentially, I give the players the plot hook I want them to follow. And make it enticing. Yeah. Essentially, just like, this is the thing, here's your quest, and then, if they take it, then that would be good if they took it. Because then, I generally also come up with the NPCs that are in the immediate area, or the factions that are around and their motivations. So I come up with personally, I'm a planner, so I like to come up with everything before we start, so that I know who the players are interacting with, and the amount I need to make up is limited.
Yeah. I started with a world map with important locations on it, and I didn't flesh out those locations. I was just like, this place is called this is what it vaguely looks like, and then the area where they were in session 1, I fleshed out a bit more with NPCs and plot hooks, and then I kind of just let the players follow which plot hooks they wanted. So and I only had sort of 3 major ones, well, not even that, it was kind of 2, and I was like, whichever one they decide to follow is whichever one become the major plot hook.
Nice.
And they decided to follow the weird cold one.
Yep.
What are you doing, Kitty?
Yes.
Which I had a feeling you guys would.
Oh, no, I wasn't there when that happened. They were already in the call when I joined. But yeah, that was, and that's where I kind of did that with villains, I feel, as well. I didn't have a plot hook in mind. It was just like, wherever you guys decided to go and whatever you guys decided to do, I would put something there. And that kind of started off the first kind of plot line that happened, which was taking down was essentially a goblin mafia.
That's
that you guys and then with the Spelljammer game, because I had a very clear-cut idea of like what the story for that was going to be, because it was going to be about these aliens, and it was going to be about this war between the people in Anua and the aliens. The plot hook, there was no way for them to avoid the plot hook, because the plot hook was they were in a tavern and aliens start invading. So it's kind of hard for them to just go, oh, we're just going to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
At that point,
I think that's the thing. Rob said it, where essentially it's okay to ask the group to make loose motivation to be together. Like, you're there to play a game, so it's okay to expect the players to, you know, to join together in some capacity.
Yeah. It's a communication thing, isn't it? It's like that whole, like, it's at the end of a session, you're like, where are you guys going next? And, like, you know, it's fine to ask that, because then you can prep that kind of thing. But,
yeah.
But in answer to Brad's question about what do we do at the beginning, I think I think Fallaize is of the same vein as I am, which is we kind of keep it pretty loose.
Yeah.
Like, we kind of like have like a main kind of story hook, and then I kind of imagine how that story hook is affecting the world. Like, the big bad is doing this stuff and it's affecting the world in this way, blah 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 blah. So as a result, there's all these other little story hooks that would crop up as a result of it. So if the big bad is like some pirate dude who's raiding all the trade in an area, then of course that's going to screw over money coming into the city.
Right.
So the other little hooks will be based off of that. So like maybe like you got to help this dude because like the protection, he can't pay his protection bracket money anymore because he's not got enough income in because the boats aren't bringing stuff in and stuff like that. And it all links together so that even if it doesn't like lead all the way up the chain and carry on the story, at least it's adding to that kind of, you know, the feel in the background. But I mean, like, I kind of just build the basics and then just kind of go with it, I suppose.
It's kind of reverse engineering, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the world, in order to make the world feel real to the players, it should react to the events that happen in the story.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, like I was saying, like if you have pirates that are kind of like plundering an area near a seaside city or town, that's going to have a major effect on that area's economy. Like you said, like that the events of the story are affecting the world around you, and you could kind of just build like that, and it's almost like a snowballing effect at times, where the more you do, the more the world changes, and the more, you know, the newer problems that kind of come out of that.
Yeah, well, it kind of builds itself, doesn't it, basically?
Yeah. You can, and like if that's the sort of thing that you want to do, because like I say, that's a very free form way of doing things and a very kind of open way of doing things. If that's the sort of game that you want to run, you don't really have to prep too much in advance, because you let the actions dictate what is going to happen next.
Yeah, it really depends on your style as well, because like Sarah's much more of a planner, and I'm much more of a, well, let's just fucking see what happens, you know, that kind of thing, like ad lib it. And it depends entirely on what you want to do as a GM as well.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Or what you're comfortable with. You know?
I mean, Sam, you built an entire system which was kind of just centered around the idea of let's see where this goes. Like,
oh yeah,
the start contract system.
Yeah, the start one, that was fun. That it worked out really well in the end.
Was
it was alright. I made like this super basic system that was like entirely narrative driven. You used a deck of cards rather than just a deck of normal playing cards, and it was basically like you declared that you were going to do something as a character, something that was in fitting with your character based on whatever thing you concocted, and you drew a card. And if you would have like the equivalent of advantage, like it was in you were doing it in something that was really good for you, like something you were skilled in, like you were trying to pick a lock and you were a thief or something, you know, then you draw 2 cards and you pick the highest one. And it was basically like that. Like I kind of just go, oh yeah, I think that's about high enough, that makes sense. Or no, that's really low, something terrible happens, blah blah blah. But it was all like narrative driven. And then I chucked it at the end, the whole if you pull the Joker, you got to play it as cool, and that was it. So player decides exactly what happens, exactly how it plays out if you draw a Joker.
Cool.
And then all the cards get reshuffled back in after that.
That's fun.
Yeah, it was a good laugh.
Let's see. Rob's
That
got a
was ages ago, wasn't
question. I've got a question. How do you deal with revealing the deep-seated philosophical quandary that lies at the heart of your character without just meta-splaining? I often like to play characters that seem absurd or perhaps follow weird ideologies that make a lot of make a lot of sense to me, but I like to play it out and show there's a serious core to the character. I often get worried by jokes that no one gets it, but I also don't like just revealing it. How do I just tell people? I think this came up because he played essentially a Power Ranger in the Fate game last night who was awesome, but we've talked about his character as well, that there's it's a bit sad because he assumes the world is this fictional world, like all the 80s.
You guys hear me still?
What's that?
You might have. Oh, hang on. Let me rejoin.
I think he thought that I was muted.
Oh, okay.
Cool. Yeah, sorry. I think that was just me.
No worries. Yeah. So his character appears very jokey, but is actually quite sad because he assumes the world is one way. But someday his realities will be shattered. I think that's the thing, is that when you have a character that complex, like with these layers, you need to play them in long campaigns, so then you have those opportunities to be developed and to come out.
Absolutely, yeah.
I think. Sorry, go on, please.
Yeah, so we'll both start at the same time.
No, that's fine, Matt. You go. I was just agreeing with Sarah.
Okay. Yeah, no. So I think one thing is to never feel pressured that you have to get all of your character's backstory out there at some point. Like, your character's backstory is there to make them a full-fledged character, and that it's not there as a thing to play at some point to go, here's my tragic story and this is why I am the way I am, because that really doesn't have to be for everyone. That really can just be for you and the GM. If you want to have a moment like that, then I think the main thing is to just give the other players hints that they haven't, like, then they're just scratching the surface with your character, and trust them to kind of probe deeper. Having like interplayer conflict as well, like inter-character conflict, that can like help to bring this stuff out as well on occasion. But yeah, I don't feel like it has to be something that has to come out at some point.
I think a lot of that. Sorry, go ahead, Sam.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Thanks. I was just gonna say. I think that. Oh, this is my personal opinion. Is that if you have something like that, you have a character, you have like this kind of hidden core, and you want it to kind of like blossom or whatever, or you want it to come out, or you want it to be, you want to have it revealed to other players or the GM as it kind of, as you kind of your character comes into their own kind of thing. I think it's important to discuss with your GM that, I want to do this, and then I'm of the opinion that it's my job as a GM to give the player the ability to live out that character. So I'm the one who should be providing them with opportunities to get those key kind of like moments where other people get insight into their character.
Yeah, because I think the thing with stories very much with like movies and TV shows and with books and things, there's a big thing if you want your stories and your character development to become more natural, is that you show, don't tell. And so it's not so much you saying, oh, I have this deep-seated thing. It's this happened in the story, and so my character's going to respond in this way. Like something happens in the game, and so suddenly that moment, that plot, that fight, that conversation triggered something in your character to have this existential crisis. And so maybe you can confide in your character, maybe will confide in another character, or maybe they explode in like this confusion, or they start acting differently and weird, which will cause the other characters to ask them what's going on. so that's again like what Sam was saying, is talking to your GM and allow them to create moments for your character to respond in that way. And you can also actually offer up, like, these are the things XYZ that could potentially cause my character to go, what's going on, and to to face those dilemmas that they have.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it's important as well, like, because it depends on how crazy the character is as well. Because like, it doesn't matter how many opportunities you give other players to understand your character in inverted commas, or like, take those cues or act based on like people don't necessarily understand it. So like a perfect example, and you'll forgive me if I'm not like meant to be talking about this, Rob, but it's fine. But so one of Rob's characters in my game, he played a Warforged like. Was it Warforged Artificer? And he was like from a bajillion years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Like, like everyone was from the current day and he was from like thousands of years ago. And he spoke in a very robotic, kind of basic, kind of straightforward, very literal way. And he was like, yeah, there's this gigantic war coming that's going to destroy the world and stuff. And everyone just thought he was a nutcase and he was being really quirky and weird. And it doesn't matter how much he tried to get across the concept, people just weren't getting it. So in the end, I was chucking in moments to be like, oh, and then and eventually people went, oh my god, like literally everything he's been saying has been true, and it actually worked out really well in the end, because they spent all this time like thinking that he wasn't legit, or thinking that he was really just a joke kind of gimmick character. And then when I dropped all this stuff in, they were like, oh my god, this whole thing was deadly serious, what are we going to do? Like, there was like all this drama, and it was wonderful.
Nice.
Yep.
Yeah.
EDL does rule. I love all the characters you guys brought last night. They were awesome. I hope that helps. That was good conversation. And we're coming up to an hour of our GM's chat. If anybody has any final thoughts on these different topics of we've talked about Burnout, we talked about different systems, homebrew campaigns, where to start, and finally about revealing those things about your character that you want to reveal. Final thoughts, gentlemen?
Be good to yourself and be good to others.
Thanks, Sam.
And don't burn out.
Don't burn out. Take care of yourself.
Yeah. Burnout sucks.
And if you're not going through burnout and would like to run something, come over and hang out with us at Wayfarers League.
Yeah.
And so if you go over to wayfarersleague.com, you can find links to our Discord server. You can see all our currently open games. You can become a member and get early access to our games. We have a blog with tons of different articles and things in there. We have a store with merchandise on Redbubble and Cotton Cart. You can find all the information about us at wayfarersleague.com. And we have our Homebrew Labs show, like our Twitch schedule is on there as well, and so our next show will be this Tuesday, where we will doing Homebrew Lab, creating a spell, myself, Fallaize, and Sam. And I think that is it for today. Thank you guys for following along. Subscribe, follow, give a like, whatever platform you're currently watching this on, if you're doing a replay on YouTube or a replay here on Twitch. Just a simple little subscribe or follow really does help us out. Leave a comment. Tell us how you guys handle burnout, or what you do with all your various systems and things. And we will be back here next Sunday for another GM's chat. So until next time. Goodbye, everyone, and goodbye, gentlemen.
Goodbye.
Bye.